Hi class, this is to add on what you have already read in your book. I just want to touch upon and clarify some of the maybe understanding of what the sampling method is. Understanding the sampling method might seem unimportant right now, but it's pretty important because it kind of guides you in what type of sample you're going to use for your study and whether it's a right path to use. By me going through this probability and non-probability sampling, I just want you to make sure that when you wrote your research proposal, that's what you thought it was. But now that you have more knowledge about the different sampling methods, you might want to go back and think about those sampling methods that you choose initially, whether those are the right ones. Okay, so probability sampling, which is one of the two basic type of sampling methods, they have simple random, systematic cluster, and stratify. In the next few slides, I will show you pictures that might be better in explaining what these are. So for simple random sampling, it is better when you have a small population, which can easily be numbered. If the population is big, then you might not have a good chance of selecting a sample frame that has an identical chance of being selected into the sample itself. Systematic, on the other hand, is selecting every X person from, say, the phone book. Okay, and so say for example, if you wanted to select a random group of 1,000 people from a population of 50,000, then you would use some systematic sampling, and how you would go about doing it is just simply select every 50th person. The math behind that would be 50,000 divided by 1,000, which is equals to 50. And that's why I say every 50th person. And from there you can kind of say that, okay, I have a population of 2,000 and I only want 100. So you can just do the math and see what person would be selected into the sample. Cluster sampling is less precise than stratified or simple random. Cluster sampling should be used only when it's economically justified, when reduced costs can be used to overcome losses in precision. This is most likely to occur in the following situations. For example, the population is concentrated in a so-called natural cluster, and this natural cluster can be a county, a city block, schools, hospitals, avenues, etc. So say for example we want to conduct interviews of operating room nurses, then it might make sense to randomly select a sample of hospital, which is stage 1, the cluster sampling, and then interview all of them, all of the operating room nurses at that hospital. Using cluster sampling, the interviewer could conduct many interviews in a single day at a single hospital. However, if you were to choose simple random sampling for this situation, then you might have to, as an interviewer, you have to spend all day traveling to conduct a single interview at a single hospital, because that's the nature of the sampling method. Stratified sampling, on the other hand, is it's very similar to cluster, but it doesn't have two stages. It has only one, and most likely the people in the sample within that population is more of a homogeneous, and then if you were to compare it to cluster, it's more heterogeneous. So let me show you a picture, a visual image of stratified sampling. This is stratified sampling. So when you have a population, you just randomly select them into a strata, and these groups are called strata, and from there you would choose your sample, and this is called stratified sampling. Systematic, on the other hand, is like we mentioned, like this is just an example. Every third person, so you want to and then the third person you pick, or like the second person you pick, and so on and so forth. So from here it's like 1, 2, and then the third person, 1, 2, and the third person, 1, 2, the third person. right? For cluster sampling, here you would see the population, and then you would pick your cluster, and then you would randomly select those clusters here. So remember the example that I gave you earlier. This might be a better picture. So say for example, we are doing cluster sampling in geographical areas, and this might be different, say, cities. Okay, so we have cluster 1, cluster 2, cluster 3, 4, and 5. And then when we apply stage 2, that's when we pick certain household within those cluster. And that kind of gives you a better idea of, you know, what how cluster is being separated from stratified sampling. Stratified sampling is also used if the population is believed to have a skewed distribution for one or more of its distinguishing feature, such as product usage. And then, so the researcher, like I mentioned in this slide, you would identify the subpopulation in that sample, which is called the strata. And then a simple random sample is then taken to each stratum, so one stratum, and then you would pick the person to make sure that the population, this approach is better suited than other probability sampling, because if you know that the population are not distributed in a bell-shaped pattern. In other words, if the population you think is skewed, then it's better that you choose stratified sampling. Okay. Now, on the flip side, non-probability sampling is not based on equal chance or whatsoever. So convenience is just like the name say, it's based on convenience. You would use like high traffic location area because you know that there's a better chance of you getting more people into the sample, such as like a busy pedestrian area or like a shopping mall. And then so the possibility of you selecting respondents for that sample frame would be higher. Purposive sampling, on the other hand, is based on your educated guess or your judgment that you can identify who is better suited to be fitted into that sample size. So say for example, if you want to know about law, then you would probably go to judges and lawyers, and the best place to go is like courts or like law schools or whatnot. That might be, or law offices, that might be a better chance. So that is a purpose that you have already set up to look for those certain people, for that certain members of that population. Referral, on the other hand, is you having somebody, say you have a gatekeeper, you ask that person whether they know somebody, and that somebody will know the other somebody. Often we use snowballing as another term for referral sampling, whereby you don't have much information, so you need somebody to kind of give you a hint to where to look for the next information, and so that person that refers you to the next, that will be referral. Quota sampling is when you set up a quota for each class of respondent. So for example, if you say that you only want 10% or like 20%, then you would use that percentage to kind of determine how many respondents you want from a particular population. So often quota sampling is used as a means of ensuring convenient samples will have the desired proportion of different respondent classes. And we often use quota characteristics like product use factors or like demographics and so on. So hopefully the difference between probability and non-probability gives you a better idea. And within those different basic sampling methods, there are more details in it. And depending on the nature of your study, you might have to go back to your research proposal and see and kind of look back and see whether those are the really accurate sampling method, because at the end of the day, what you wrote in the proposal you will need to integrate into your final research paper. Okay, let me know if you have any more questions, or not anymore, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. but just make sure that you have the right sampling method, so that you'll be able to justify that why you use this method, because the people that you're looking for are this. Okay, look forward to hearing more, reading more about your comments on Blackboard discussion board.